There is a moment, and almost nobody can tell you exactly when it happens. A specific moment that exists somewhere between the life you have been living and the life that becomes possible after it. It does not arrive with announcement. It does not schedule itself in your calendar or send a warning that today is the day everything shifts. It arrives quietly. In the middle of an ordinary moment, while you are doing something completely unremarkable, washing the dishes, driving a familiar road, lying awake at 3 in the morning for the 100th time. And in that moment, something in your subconscious finally does what it has been building toward, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. It crosses a threshold. A specific neurological threshold that separates the person who is trying to change from the person who has actually changed, the person who is working toward a different life from the person who is already living one, the person whose subconscious is still running the old programs from the person whose subconscious has genuinely installed new ones. Most people spend their entire lives on the wrong side of that threshold. Not because the threshold is unreachable, but because they do not understand what it actually is, what crosses it, what the subconscious is waiting for before it allows the crossing. Today I'm going to show you exactly what that moment is, what creates it, what prevents it, and most importantly, what you can do starting today to bring it closer. Because the moment everything changes is not something that happens to you. It is something that your subconscious has been patiently waiting to allow, and it is waiting for something very specific. To understand what the exact moment of change actually is, we need to understand something about how subconscious programs are structured, and specifically about the threshold that separates a program being challenged from a program being replaced. Every subconscious program has what neuroscientists call a dominant neural pathway, a physical connection between neurons that has been strengthened through years of repetition until it became the automatic response, the default way of processing a particular type of experience. When you begin the work of changing a subconscious program, you are not immediately replacing this dominant pathway. You are beginning to build a new one alongside it. In the early days and weeks of any genuine change practice, both pathways exist simultaneously. The old one, still stronger by far, still the automatic default, and the new one, thin and slow, and requiring deliberate conscious effort to activate. The moment everything changes is the moment the new pathway crosses the threshold at which it becomes more dominant than the old one. The moment the new program becomes the automatic response, and the old one becomes the exception rather than the rule. Neuroscientists call this the tipping point of neuroplasticity. The specific moment in the process of genuine change when the balance of neural weight shifts from the old program to the new one. And what characterizes this moment? What makes it feel so distinct from all the moments that preceded it? Is that the change suddenly stops requiring effort. The new response begins to arrive automatically. Before the conscious mind has had to choose it, the gratitude arrives before the deliberate practice. The confidence arrives before the deliberate installation. The new identity begins to feel like the real one, and the old programs begin to feel like something foreign, like a way of being that no longer quite fits. If the moment of genuine change is neurologically real, and if it arrives naturally when a new neural pathway becomes sufficiently dominant, why do most people never reach it? Why do so many people spend years in the work of personal transformation, doing the practices, understanding the concepts, genuinely intending to change, and still finding themselves living fundamentally the same life, still running fundamentally the same programs, still unable to reach the specific threshold where the change becomes automatic rather than effortful? The answer is not a lack of effort. Most people who never reach the moment are working genuinely hard. The answer is not a lack of understanding. Many of them understand the mechanisms of change with impressive precision. The answer is something subtler and more fundamental than either of those. The answer is inconsistency at the critical phase. Every genuine change process has a critical phase. The period just before the threshold is reached, when the new program is almost strong enough to become dominant, when the old program's resistance is at its most intense, because the old program, like any system that is about to be replaced, generates its most powerful expression precisely when it is most threatened. This is the phase that most people mistake for failure. When the old patterns return with unexpected intensity, when the progress seems to reverse, when the person doing the work feels further from the change than they did at the beginning, and because they interpret this intensity as evidence that the change is not working, they stop just before the threshold. Just before the moment when everything would have changed, they return to the old programs, and the new pathway, so close to dominance, loses the neural weight it had almost accumulated, and the cycle begins again. The critical insight is this: the intensity of the old program's resistance is not evidence that the change is failing. It is evidence that the change is almost complete. The resistance is the threshold. Your subconscious is not passive in the process of change. It is not simply the repository of old programs waiting to be replaced by new ones. It is an active participant in the change process, and it has specific requirements that must be met before it allows the threshold to be crossed, before it permits the new program to become genuinely dominant. Understanding these requirements is the key to understanding what the subconscious is waiting for. The first requirement is evidence, not intellectual understanding of the new program, not the cognitive conviction that the new way of being is better than the old one. Genuine experiential evidence that the new program is safe, that the world the new program predicts is the world that actually exists. The subconscious was programmed through experience, and it updates through experience. It requires the accumulation of enough lived evidence that the new identity is real, that the new responses produce the outcomes they are supposed to produce, that the feared consequences of the change do not materialize before it allows the threshold to be crossed. This is why the daily practice of identity-aligned action is so essential. Each action taken from the new program and survived, each moment of genuine expression that is met with the world's continued presence rather than the feared rejection, is a piece of evidence that the subconscious adds to its file. And when the file has enough evidence, the threshold becomes crossable. The second requirement is emotional congruence. The subconscious requires that the new program be installed, not just cognitively, but emotionally. Not just understood, but felt. The person who understands the new identity intellectually, but has never genuinely felt what it is like to inhabit it, has not given the subconscious what it needs to make the program dominant. The theta practice of genuine emotional inhabitation of the new identity is the specific practice that meets this requirement. The felt experience of being the person the new program describes, held consistently in the state of maximum subconscious receptivity, is what the subconscious is waiting for before it allows the change to become permanent. How do you know when the moment of genuine change is approaching? When the threshold is close rather than distant? There are specific signals that the subconscious generates in the period just before the threshold is crossed. Signals that most people either do not notice or misinterpret as evidence of the opposite of what they actually indicate. The first signal is the intensification of the old pattern. As we discussed earlier, the old program generates its most intense expression precisely when it is most threatened. If you have been doing consistent subconscious work and suddenly the old patterns return with unexpected force, this is not regression. This is the threshold's proximity. The old program fighting hardest because it is about to lose. The second signal is the quality of changing. In the early phases of genuine change work, the new responses require significant conscious effort to activate. They feel deliberate, labored, like something you are doing rather than something you are. As the threshold approaches, this quality shifts subtly. The new responses begin to arrive slightly faster, slightly more naturally. The gap between the stimulus and the new response begins to close, not dramatically, subtly, but noticeably to someone who is paying careful attention to their own process. The third signal is the arrival of what I call subconscious confirmation, specific moments in which the new identity feels, for a brief and vivid instant, genuinely real rather than aspirational. Moments when the gratitude arrives spontaneously before the practice begins, when the confidence is simply present rather than being generated, when the new way of responding to a familiar trigger arrives automatically. Before the old way has had a chance to activate, these moments are brief in the beginning, and they are followed by the return of the old program. But they are the subconscious showing you what is being built, showing you that the threshold is real and that it is closer than it has ever been before. Let me describe what the moment of genuine change actually feels like from the inside, because most people who are doing the work have never had an accurate description of what they are working toward. And the absence of this description makes the process harder than it needs to be. The moment does not feel dramatic. This is perhaps the most important thing to understand about it. It does not arrive with the cinematic intensity that the motivational culture associates with transformation. There is no sudden awakening, no blinding revelation, no moment of such powerful emotional charge that the old programs are instantaneously dissolved. The moment of genuine subconscious change feels quiet, almost ordinary, like something settling rather than something erupting, like a door closing gently in a room you have been trying to leave for years. And then you notice that you are on the other side of it, without quite being able to identify the precise moment of crossing. You are driving the familiar road and you notice that the habitual anxious thought did not arrive. And you realize, with a quality of quiet surprise rather than dramatic triumph, that it has not been arriving as reliably as it used to. You are in the situation that previously triggered the automatic response of unworthiness or fear or withdrawal, and you notice that the response is delayed, quieter, less automatic than it was. You are doing the morning practice and you notice that the gratitude is already present when you sit down, but you are not generating it from scratch, that it arrived before you began. These are the moments of the change, small, undramatic, individually unremarkable, but collectively constituting the crossing of the threshold that separates the life you have, then living from the life that becomes available on the other side. There is a specific element of the moment of change that the purely neurological description does not fully capture, and it is perhaps the most important element of all, because it is the one that is genuinely within your conscious control. Every genuine threshold crossing is preceded by a specific quality of decision, not the ordinary decision to try something new. Not the resolution made at the beginning of the year with the specific combination of genuine intention and subconscious skepticism that guarantees its eventual abandonment, but a different quality of decision entirely. A decision made from a place of complete internal honesty about what is actually true, what is actually wanted, what the cost of not changing actually is, and what the person making the decision actually is. In the work of Viktor Frankl, this quality of decision appears as the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's response to one's circumstances, regardless of what those circumstances are. In the Stoic tradition, it appears as the distinction between what is within our power and what is not, and the specific quality of clarity that arises when a person fully accepts the boundary between the two and commits completely to mastering what is theirs to master. In modern psychology, it appears as what researchers call a quantum change, a specific type of transformative experience characterized not by the gradual accumulation of evidence, but by a sudden clarity about what is true and what is possible and what the person is choosing. This quality of decision does not replace the neurological work. The consistent daily practice is still essential, but it creates the specific internal conditions under which the neurological work can reach the threshold faster. Because it withdraws the ambivalence that was slowing the process, the subconscious installs programs most quickly when it receives unambiguous instructions. And the genuine decision provides exactly that, the unambiguous instruction. I am choosing this completely without the reservation that leaves the old program room to maintain its dominance. Now let me give you the specific protocol for accelerating the arrival of the moment. For giving the subconscious what it needs to cross the threshold faster than the default pace of gradual accumulation. The first element is the clarity practice. Every morning before the theta practice begins, you spend 5 minutes with the question that the genuine decision requires. What is the cost, in real and specific terms, of remaining on this side of the threshold for another year, another 5 years, the rest of my life, not the abstract cost, the specific cost, the relationship that will continue to be less than it could be, the work that will continue to be driven by fear rather than by genuine excellence, the version of yourself that will continue to be unlived, the creative work that will continue to be unfinished, the life that will continue to be someone else's rather than genuinely yours. Hold this cost clearly and honestly for 5 minutes, and then ask the companion question. What becomes available on the other side of the threshold? What does the day feel like when the new program is the automatic default? What does the relationship feel like? What does the work feel like? What does the morning feel like when the gratitude and the confidence and the genuine aliveness are simply present rather than being generated through effort? The contrast between these two visions, held honestly and specifically in the 5 minutes before the theta practice, provides the subconscious with the motivational clarity it needs to allocate its full processing power toward the threshold crossing. The second element is the evidence accumulation practice. Every evening, you record one specific piece of evidence from the day that the new program is real. One moment when the new response arrived before the old one. One instance when the identity of the new self felt genuinely true rather than aspirational. One experience that the subconscious can add to its file of evidence that the change is safe, that the new program works, that the threshold is crossable. The third element of the protocol addresses the critical phase, the period of intensified resistance that precedes the threshold. And it is perhaps the most practically important element of all, because this is the phase where most people stop, where the return of the old patterns with unexpected intensity is interpreted as failure, and where the decision to abandon the practice is made just before the moment would have arrived. The practice for the critical phase is what I call the witness stance, the specific internal orientation of someone who is observing the old program's intensification without identifying with it, without experiencing it as the truth about who they are, but as the last expression of something that is about to change. When the old pattern returns with unexpected force during the critical phase, you practice 3 specific steps. The first is naming, this is the old program's final intensity. This is the resistance before the threshold. This is not who I am, it is what is leaving. The naming creates the essential distance between the observation and the identification. Between seeing the old pattern and being the old pattern, the second step is staying. You do not escape the discomfort. You do not reach for the old relief that the old pattern promises. You stay with the discomfort, not passively, with the active quality of someone who understands what the discomfort means and has decided to remain present through it. The third step is continuing the practice. On the very day when the old pattern has returned most intensely, you do the theta practice with more deliberate presence than on the easy days. You give the subconscious the clearest possible signal that the decision is real, that the intensity of the resistance has not changed the direction of the movement, and the subconscious, receiving this signal in the moment of maximum uncertainty about whether the new program will prevail, uses it to cross the threshold that has been approaching all along. The moment everything changes does not end the work, but it changes the nature of the work completely before the threshold is crossed. The work is the effort of building a new neural pathway against the dominance of the old one. Every day is the deliberate choice of the new response over the automatic old one. Every practice is the generation of something that does not yet arrive naturally. After the threshold is crossed, the work becomes something different. It becomes the maintenance and the deepening of what has genuinely become natural. The gratitude that now arrives spontaneously is cultivated rather than generated. The confidence that is now the automatic response is deepened rather than installed. The identity that has genuinely become your own is expressed and expanded rather than asserted against resistance. The texture of the daily experience changes in ways that are difficult to anticipate before crossing the threshold. The morning feels different, not because the circumstances have changed, but because the filter through which you experience the morning has genuinely updated. The relationships feel different, because the quality of presence you bring to them has changed. The work feels different, because the orientation from which it arises has shifted from fear to genuine engagement. The body feels different, because the subconscious programs driving its physiology have updated, and the results, the external results that the internal change produces, begin to change as well. Not dramatically and immediately, but with the steady and compounding quality of someone whose subconscious is now working for them rather than against them, whose frequency is now consistently generating the perceptual and physiological and interpersonal conditions under which the results they most want become genuinely available. The moment everything changes is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of the life that the subconscious has been waiting to allow you to live. History is full of documented accounts of the moment of genuine subconscious threshold crossing. Moments that the people who experienced them described with the specific quality of quiet surprise and gentle irreversibility that characterizes genuine change rather than temporary motivation. Augustine of Hippo, the philosopher and theologian whose life and work have shaped Western thought for 16 centuries, described his own threshold moment with extraordinary precision. He had been doing the intellectual and spiritual work of transformation for years, understanding it completely, intending it genuinely, and finding himself unable to cross the final threshold that separated understanding from genuine change. And then one afternoon in a garden in Milan, in the middle of the most ordinary moment, he heard a child's voice singing what seemed to be a simple instruction. "Pick it up and read." He opened the book in front of him. Read a single passage, and something shifted. He described it as a light of certainty flooding his heart. The threshold crossing that years of intellectual understanding had not produced arrived in a moment of complete ordinariness. In the specific quality of readiness that the accumulated work had built without him knowing the threshold was so close, William James, whose work we have referenced throughout this series, spent years studying these threshold moments and concluded that they shared a common structure regardless of their external form. A period of preparation, a critical phase of intensified resistance, and then the moment of crossing, which he described as always feeling more like a discovery than an achievement, more like finding something that was always there than like creating something new. Nelson Mandela described the moment of his own internal threshold crossing as arriving not in freedom but in the depths of imprisonment. When he realized with complete certainty that the person he was becoming in the silence of his cell was more real and more genuinely his than anything the circumstances of his life had previously allowed him to be, the moment everything changed for Mandela arrived not when the prison door opened, but years before, when the subconscious finally crossed the threshold that his patient and deliberate inner work had been building toward. I want to speak honestly about the things that most reliably prevent the moment from arriving, because understanding them gives you the specific power to stop doing them. The first and most powerful preventer is the interpretation of the critical phase as failure. We have discussed this already, but it deserves to be named again with complete clarity because it is so common and so costly. The moment when the old patterns return with unexpected intensity, when the work seems to have produced regression rather than progress, is the moment that most directly precedes the threshold. It is the subconscious's final test of the decision's genuineness, and the person who interprets it as evidence that the change is not working, and who stops the practice in response to that interpretation, fails the test at the exact moment when passing it would have produced the crossing. If you are in the critical phase right now, if you are experiencing the return of the old patterns with unexpected intensity after a period of genuine progress, do not stop. This is the moment to continue with the most deliberate and genuine practice available to you. The second preventer is the seeking of external validation for the internal change. The announcement of the transformation before it is complete. The performance of the new identity for an audience before it has genuinely become the default. Both of which trigger the premature satisfaction mechanism we explored in the video about silence. Both of which reduce the subconscious's internal drive to complete the change by providing social confirmation that partially substitutes for the genuine completion. Work in silence until the threshold is crossed. Let the results announce the change when they are ready. The third preventer is impatience, the specific quality of urgency that demands the moment arrive on a particular timeline. that interprets the natural pace of genuine neurological change as insufficient progress. And that generates the specific anxiety of someone who does not trust the process they are engaged in. The moment cannot be forced. It can only be earned through the consistent daily practice that builds the neural pathway that makes the crossing inevitable. Impatience interferes with that practice. It changes the quality of the work from genuine patient building to anxious performance. And the subconscious responds to genuine patient building, not to anxious performance. Let us come back to where we began. There is a moment, and almost nobody can tell you exactly when it happens. Now you know what it is. It is the specific neurological threshold at which the new subconscious program becomes more dominant than the old one. The moment when the change stops requiring effort and begins to arrive naturally, when the gratitude is simply present, when the confidence is simply there, when the new identity feels genuinely like the real one and the old programs feel like something that belongs to a version of you that is quietly becoming the past. Your subconscious has been waiting for this moment, not passively, with the specific patient intelligence of a system that requires evidence and emotional congruence and the unambiguous instruction of a genuine decision before it allows the threshold to be crossed. The clarity practice that shows the subconscious the real cost of remaining on this side. The evidence accumulation that builds the file of proof that the new program is safe. The witness stance that carries the practice through the critical phase without stopping. And the genuine decision, made with complete internal honesty and complete commitment, that removes the ambivalence that was slowing the process. You may be closer to the moment than you know. The intensity of the old pattern's return may not be regression, it may be the threshold, the critical phase that immediately precedes the crossing. If you're in that phase right now, continue the practice. Do not interpret the resistance as failure. Interpret it as proximity. The subconscious does not cross the threshold until it is ready, but it becomes ready through exactly the work you have been doing. And when it crosses, the moment will arrive as it always arrives, quietly, in the middle of something ordinary, like a door closing gently in a room you have been trying to leave for a very long time, and you will find yourself on the other side, wondering how long the threshold had been this close. Subscribe to Awake Mind. I will see you in the next one.